The club was called Obsidian, and it was the kind of place where Manhattan's elite went to pretend they were dangerous. All glass and chrome and pulsing music with bottle service that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and a door policy that ensured only the beautiful and wealthy made it past the velvet rope. Raffaele Marchetti sat in the VIP section, nursing a whiskey that probably cost $300, and watching the crowd below with the detached interest of a predator sizing up potential prey. He was 35 years old, built like someone who understood that physical power was still relevant even in an age of guns and digital warfare. At 6 feet 3 inches with broad shoulders, dark hair he kept precisely cut, and sharp features that suggested both Italian and perhaps Northern European ancestry, he had the kind of presence that made people move out of his way without conscious thought. His suit was custom Brioni, his watch was a Patek Philippe that cost more than most cars, and his eyes were a pale green that appeared almost gray in certain light. Calculating. Cold. The eyes of someone who had seen violence and been unaffected by it. He was here tonight for business, not pleasure. His target was across the club, a tech CEO named Julian Hartley who had been making moves into territory the Marchetti family considered theirs. Gambling, specifically. Online gambling, which was technically illegal in New York but thrived anyway, and which represented a significant revenue stream for Raffaele's organization. Hartley had launched a platform 6 months ago that was siphoning customers away from Marchetti operations, and subtle warnings had been ignored. So tonight, Raffaele was going to send a message that couldn't be ignored. He wasn't going to hurt Hartley directly. That would bring too much attention, too much heat. But the woman Hartley was with, the brunette in the red dress who kept touching his arm and laughing at his jokes, she was different. She appeared to be his girlfriend, which made her leverage. Grabbing her, scaring her, making Hartley understand that his business ventures were putting people he cared about in danger, that would be message enough. Raffaele signaled to his men, Enzo and Matteo, who were positioned at different points around the club. They were good at what they did. Ex-military, trained, discreet. They would wait until the woman went to the bathroom or stepped outside for air, then they would take her. Quick, clean, professional. She would spend a few uncomfortable hours in one of Marchetti's warehouses, while Hartley was informed that this was what happened when you disrespected established territory. Then she would be released, unharmed, with a message about what could happen if Hartley continued to be a problem. It was a calculated move. Measured violence designed to achieve a specific goal without creating unnecessary complications. Raffaele had been running his family's operations for 7 years since his father's death, and he prided himself on being more strategic than his predecessors. Less bloodshed, more psychology. Fear was more effective than actual violence and far less likely to attract federal attention. At 11:30, the woman in the red dress stood and said something to Hartley, then headed toward the bathrooms. Raffaele watched Enzo and Matteo move into position. Professional, practiced. This wasn't their first extraction. What Raffaele didn't know, what his intelligence hadn't uncovered, was that the woman in the red dress wasn't Julian Hartley's girlfriend. She was Simone Powell, 28 years old, and she was at Obsidian for her own business reasons. Reasons that had nothing to do with tech CEOs and everything to do with the fact that Obsidian's owner was laundering money for a rival family, and Simone's father wanted to know the details of their operation. Simone Powell was beautiful in a way that made people underestimate her. She stood 5 feet 8 inches in heels, with rich brown skin that seemed to glow under the club lights. Natural hair she wore in elegant locks that fell past her shoulders, and a figure that the red dress displayed to devastating effect. But it was her eyes that should have warned people. Dark brown and assessing, always watching, always calculating. The eyes of someone who had grown up in a world where weakness meant death. She was the only daughter of Isaiah Powell, head of the Powell crime family, an organization that controlled significant territory in Harlem, Brooklyn, and parts of New Jersey, where the Italian families dealt in traditional rackets like gambling, protection, and construction. The Powells had diversified. Real estate, legitimate businesses, political connections, and a network of operations that made them one of the most powerful Black organized crime families on the East Coast. Simone had been raised in that world, educated at the best schools, trained in both legitimate business and the family's less legitimate operations, and groomed to eventually take over when her father retired. She was smart, she was dangerous, and she was absolutely not someone you wanted to kidnap by mistake. But Raffaele didn't know any of that as he watched his men move in. Simone had just left the bathroom and was walking toward a side exit, planning to call her driver, when she felt the presence of 2 men falling into step beside her. She didn't react visibly, just kept walking, her hand sliding toward the small clutch purse that contained both her phone and a weapon her father had insisted she carry. "Miss, we need you to come with us," one of the men said quietly. Italian accent, professional tone. This wasn't a random mugging. "I don't think so," Simone said calmly, still walking. "We don't want to make a scene," the other man said, and she felt something press against her side. A gun, probably. Making a scene right now would be stupid, she thought. If they really wanted to take her, better to see where this goes. "Do you know who I am?" Simone asked, stopping and turning to face them. Both men were large, competent-looking, clearly trained, but they had the slightly uncertain look of people who were used to civilians being afraid of them and weren't quite sure what to make of her calm response. "We know you're with Julian Hartley," the first man said. His black jacket was well-fitted, and she'd noticed a small comms earpiece in his left ear. "Professional setup. And we need you to come with us. Now. Either you walk out quietly or we carry you. Your choice." Simone almost laughed. These idiots thought she was Hartley's date. They had no idea who they were about to kidnap. She should probably tell them. Should probably explain that she was Isaiah Powell's daughter and that taking her was going to start a war that would cost both families millions of dollars and dozens of lives. But where was the fun in that? "Okay," she said simply. "Let's go." Both men blinked, clearly surprised. "You're going to come willingly?" "I'm curious where this goes," Simone said with a slight smile. "Lead the way." They took her to a black SUV parked in the alley behind Obsidian. The first man, the one she mentally labeled as Enzo based on a quick glimpse of his phone screen, showing a text signed E. Vitale, zip-tied her wrists in front of her. Gentle enough not to cut off circulation, but secure. Professional kidnapping technique. "Is that really necessary?" Simone asked. "I said I'd come." "Orders," Enzo said shortly. They blindfolded her, which was smarter than she would have expected, and drove for approximately 20 minutes. Simone tracked the turns, the stops, the general direction. Brooklyn, probably. Industrial area based on the sounds once they got out of the vehicle. Waterfront, maybe. Lots of possibilities. When they removed the blindfold, she was in a warehouse. Clean, organized, clearly used for legitimate business as well as whatever the Marchettis needed it for. Enzo and Matteo, along with a third man who looked like he was in charge, were watching her with varying degrees of wariness. "Make yourself comfortable," the third man said. "Not Italian. American. Possibly Irish based on the coloring. You're going to be here for a while." "How long is a while?" Simone asked. "Until your boyfriend learns his lesson about respecting territory." "He's not my boyfriend," Simone said, but they were already walking away. She was left in a small office area, still zip-tied but otherwise unharmed. They had searched her purse and pockets, but missed the phone she kept in a concealed inner pocket of her dress, designed specifically to defeat a standard pat-down. Professionals would have done a more thorough search, but these guys were being respectful. Probably had orders not to manhandle her too much. Their mistake. Simone waited until she was sure they were gone, then awkwardly fished out her phone and called her father. Isaiah Powell answered on the second ring. "Simone, everything okay?" "Depends on your definition of okay," Simone said. "I've been kidnapped." There was a beat of silence, then, very carefully, "Explain." "I'm in what looks like a Marchetti warehouse. They grabbed me from Obsidian because they think I'm Julian Hartley's girlfriend. They have no idea who I actually am." Another pause. "You're telling me that Raffaele Marchetti just accidentally kidnapped my daughter while trying to send a message to a tech CEO?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you." Her father laughed. Actually laughed. "That boy just made the worst mistake of his life." "Probably," Simone agreed. "Question is, what do we do about it?" "What do you want to do about it?" Isaiah asked. "Say the word and I'll have 50 men there in 20 minutes. And start a war with the Italians over a misunderstanding? That seems excessive." "They kidnapped you, Simone. They grabbed the wrong woman by accident. I'm curious to see how this plays out. Give me until tomorrow morning. If I'm not home by then, feel free to burn the city down." "Simone. Dad, trust me. This could actually be interesting. The Marchettis don't even know they messed up yet. I want to see what happens when they realize." Isaiah sighed, the sigh of a man who had raised a daughter with far too much of his own personality. "You have until 8 tomorrow morning. That's approximately 8.5 hours from now. If I don't hear from you by then, I'm declaring war. Fair enough. Love you, Dad. Love you too, baby. And Simone, be careful. She hung up and sat back to wait. This was either going to be very entertaining or very deadly. Possibly both. It was approximately 45 minutes later when she heard raised voices outside the office. Someone was upset. Someone else was on the phone, voice tense. Then footsteps, quick and purposeful, heading her way. The door opened and Raffaele Marchetti walked in, and Simone understood immediately why people feared him. He had presence, the kind of natural authority that made you want to step back even when he wasn't doing anything threatening. Tall, well-built, impeccably dressed even at this hour, with eyes that assessed her like she was a particularly interesting puzzle. "You're not Julian Hartley's girlfriend," he said without preamble. "No," Simone agreed pleasantly. "I'm not." "You're Simone Powell, Isaiah Powell's daughter." "Yes, I am." Raffaele closed his eyes briefly, and Simone watched him visibly process the magnitude of this mistake. "We grabbed the wrong woman." "You grabbed the wrong woman," Simone confirmed. She held up her zip-tied wrists. "Do you think we could take these off now? They're getting uncomfortable." He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulled a knife from somewhere, and cut the zip ties with efficient precision. Up close, Simone could see that his eyes weren't just green but had flecks of gray and gold, and that he smelled like expensive cologne and something darker. Gunpowder, maybe, or just the scent of power. "I apologize," Raffaele said, his accent more pronounced with stress. "This was not supposed to happen. You were not supposed to be you." "Well, I am me," Simone said, rubbing her wrists. "And you've created quite the diplomatic situation, Mr. Marchetti." "I'm aware." He ran a hand through his hair, disrupting the perfect styling. "Your father is going to declare war?" "Probably. He's very protective. Also very good at violence." "As is mine." "Your father is dead," Simone pointed out. "I meant your organization." "My organization would lose a war with the Powells," Raffaele said bluntly. "Your father has more men, better connections, and the advantage of defense. Plus, the optics would be terrible. Italian family kidnaps black crime boss's daughter? That plays very badly for us in every community." "So what are you going to do?" Simone asked, genuinely curious. "Ideally, convince you not to let your father start a war. Failing that, prepare for siege." "What's in it for me?" Raffaele looked at her sharply. "You want something in exchange for peace?" "I want to know why I should care if you and my father go to war. Give me a reason to intercede." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not what I expected?" "What did you expect?" "Fear, anger, tears maybe. Not negotiation." "I don't do tears," Simone said, "and I prefer negotiation to violence. Usually." "So convince me, Mr. Marchetti. Why should I save you from the consequences of your mistake?" And that was when something shifted in the room. When Raffaele looked at her not like a victim or a problem, but like an equal. Like someone worth talking to instead of talking at. "Come with me," he said, and led her out of the office into the main warehouse space. It was nearly 1 a.m. now, and most of Raffaele's men had been sent away, leaving just a core group who knew about the situation. Raffaele led Simone to a corner area that had been set up as a casual meeting space, comfortable chairs around a low table. "Coffee?" he offered. "Please." He made coffee himself, from an expensive espresso machine that seemed incongruous in the industrial setting. While he worked, Simone studied him. He moved with practiced efficiency, and there was something almost meditative about the way he prepared the drinks. This was a man who appreciated ritual, precision, control. "My father used to say that violence was easy," Raffaele said, handing her a perfect cappuccino. "That any idiot could pull a trigger or swing a bat. The hard part was building something that lasted, creating power that didn't depend on constantly proving your strength through bloodshed." "Wise man," Simone said. "He was. And when he died, I inherited an organization that was still operating like it was 1960. Protection rackets, street violence, constant territorial disputes. We were making money but hemorrhaging it on legal fees, medical costs, and the constant need to replace people who got arrested or killed. So you changed it. I tried to change it. To modernize. To focus on operations that were less visible, less violent. We invested in legitimate businesses, streamlined our less legitimate operations, built relationships instead of just taking territory. It's been working. Violence is down, profits are up, Federal attention has decreased. We're building something sustainable. Until you kidnapped me, Simone said with a slight smile. Until I kidnapped you, Raffaele agreed. He sat across from her, his posture open despite the situation. A war with your family would destroy everything I've built. The violence would spiral. The feds would get involved. People would die. And at the end of it, even if we won, which we wouldn't, we would be back where we started. Weak, exposed, vulnerable. So you want me to, protect you from the consequences of your actions. I want you to help me prevent an unnecessary war. This was a mistake. A stupid, careless mistake based on bad intelligence. But it doesn't have to become a bloodbath. Simone sipped her coffee. It was excellent, rich, and perfectly balanced. You make a good argument, but my father's pride has been damaged. You took his daughter. He can't let that stand without response. What if the response wasn't violence? What if there was another way to resolve this? Such as? Raffaele leaned forward. Your father wants to expand into legitimate real estate development. I know this because we track competitor movements. Our family has connections in construction, zoning, city hall, things that take years to build. You're offering to help my father's legitimate business ventures in exchange for not starting a war over the illegitimate issue of kidnapping his daughter? I'm offering partnership, alliance. Your family has strengths, where we have weaknesses. We have strengths where you have weaknesses. Instead of fighting over territory, we could divide it more efficiently. Instead of competing for the same resources, we could specialize in trade. My father would never agree to that. Our families have been competitors for decades. Your father is a pragmatist, Raffaele said, and he's smart enough to know that cooperation is more profitable than conflict. Besides, this gives him a win. He gets access to our infrastructure and connections, and he gets it as reparations for my mistake. He saves face and gains advantage. Simone studied him over the rim of her coffee cup. This was interesting, more interesting than she had expected when those two idiots grabbed her from Obsidian. Raffaele Marchetti was smart, strategic, and apparently willing to completely rethink family rivalries if it served his goals. You're assuming my father will listen to me, she said. You're his only child and his designated successor. Of course he'll listen to you. And you're assuming I'll support this idea. Are you opposed to it? Simone considered. No, actually. I think you're right that cooperation would be more profitable than competition. And I like that you're approaching this strategically rather than emotionally. But there's a problem. What problem? Your people kidnapped me. That's not something the families in our world just overlook. There has to be accountability. My father will demand it. What kind of accountability? Blood, normally. He'd expect you to hand over the men who grabbed me, or at the very least to punish them publicly as a demonstration of respect. Raffaele's expression hardened. Enzo and Matteo were following my orders. This mistake is mine, not theirs. I'm not sacrificing my men for my error. I respect that, Simone said and meant it. Loyalty to subordinates was rare in their world. But it creates a political problem. My father's people will expect consequences. Then I'll face the consequences, not my men. You're willing to take personal accountability? It's the only honorable option. They sat in silence for a moment, and Simone found herself reassessing this man. He had made a catastrophic mistake, but he was handling it with a combination of strategic thinking and personal integrity that was uncommon in their world. Most bosses would either bluster and threaten or try to shift blame to underlings. Raffaele was doing neither. I have a proposal, Simone said slowly, but you're not going to like it. Try me. You present yourself to my father. Personally. You acknowledge the mistake, you take full responsibility, and you offer the alliance as restitution. You do it in front of witnesses from both families so everyone sees that you're showing proper respect. And what happens when I show up on Powell territory to apologize for kidnapping his daughter? Your father could kill me and be entirely justified. He won't kill you. You seem very certain of that. Because I'll be there to vouch for you. I'll tell him that you've been respectful, that you're proposing something valuable, and that killing you would be wasteful. My father trusts my judgment. You're asking me to put my life in your hands, based on your belief that your father trusts you. Yes, Simone said simply. That's what I'm asking. Raffaele studied her, those unusual green eyes assessing. Why would you do that? Vouch for me? I kidnapped you. By accident. and because I think you're right that cooperation would be better than conflict. Also, I'm curious to see if you actually have the courage to walk into what could be a trap. That's a terrible reason to risk my life. Maybe, but you're going to do it anyway. How do you know? Because you're not stupid enough to refuse. This is your best option and you know it. The alternative is war, which you've already acknowledged you'll lose. This way, there's at least a chance of salvaging the situation. Raffaele laughed softly. You're dangerous, Miss Powell. Simone, if we're going to be partners, you should use my name. Partners? If this works, our families will be allied. That makes us partners. Raffaele. He extended his hand. Deal. Partners. Simone shook it and felt something electric pass between them at the contact. His hand was warm, his grip firm without being crushing. The hand of someone who knew his own strength and controlled it. She pulled back, unsettled by her reaction. This was business, strategic alliance. She couldn't afford to be distracted by the fact that Raffaele Marchetti was attractive, intelligent, and apparently possessed of both courage and integrity. I should call my father, Simone said, standing. Tell him I'm safe and arrange the meeting. Will he agree to meet? If I ask him to, yes. Tomorrow afternoon, probably. Neutral ground. Nothing about Powell territory is neutral for me. Fine. We'll do it somewhere actually neutral. The Gramercy Hotel. Public enough that my father won't risk obvious violence. Private enough that we can talk freely. You've done this before, negotiated between families. I've been training for this my entire life, Simone said. My father wants me to take over eventually. That means understanding diplomacy, strategy, and how to turn problems into opportunities. And I'm an opportunity? You're a solution to multiple problems. My father gets a valuable alliance and restitution for an insult. You avoid a war and gain a powerful partner. I get to demonstrate my ability to navigate complex political situations. Everyone wins. Except Julian Hartley. Simone smiled. He'll get over it. Probably won't even know how close he came to starting a war between organized crime families. She made the call to her father, explaining the situation and her proposal. Isaiah was skeptical, as expected, but ultimately trusted her judgment. Enough to agree to the meeting. They would meet at the Gramercy Hotel at 3 the following afternoon. 6 o'clock that evening would be the new deadline for resolution. When Simone hung up, it was nearly 2 in the morning. She should probably ask Raffaele to have someone drive her home, but she found herself not wanting to leave. The conversation had been stimulating in a way that most of her interactions weren't. People in their world were usually either trying to impress her, intimidate her, or marry her. Raffaele was doing none of those things. He was just talking to her like an equal. You should rest, Raffaele said. We have a few hours before sunrise. I can have a room prepared for you upstairs. This warehouse has living quarters for when we need to stay on site. And you'll be here? I'll be here, working out the details of what I'm going to propose to your father. I could help with that, if you want a Powell perspective on what will appeal to him. Raffaele smiled, and it transformed his face from coldly handsome to something warmer. I would appreciate that, actually. Partnership starts now? Partnership starts now, Simone agreed. They spent the next several hours working through the details of what Raffaele would propose. It became clear very quickly that they thought alike strategically. Where Simone identified potential objections, Raffaele had already considered solutions. Where Raffaele saw opportunities, Simone understood how to position them to appeal to Powell interests. It was nearly dawn when they finally finished, the warehouse windows beginning to show gray light. Simone was exhausted but energized, the kind of tired that came from intense mental work rather than physical exertion. You should get some sleep, Raffaele said, looking at her with concern. The meeting with your father is in 9 hours. What about you? I'll sleep after. I need to brief my people, make sure everyone understands what we're proposing. Do you think they'll support it? Your organization? Some will resist. Change is always difficult, especially when it involves allying with former competitors. But I'm the boss. They'll follow my lead. That kind of authority only works if your people respect you. Do you think they don't? Simone smiled. I think you've earned their respect by being willing to take responsibility for your mistakes. That's rare. Most bosses would blame the subordinates. Most bosses are idiots who don't understand that loyalty goes both ways. Agreed. They looked at each other in the growing dawnlight, and Simone felt that electric pull again. Attraction, yes, but also something deeper. Recognition. This was someone who understood her world, who thought the way she thought, who valued the same things she valued. Dangerous territory, she thought. This man kidnapped you a few hours ago. Don't confuse good strategy with personal connection, but she couldn't quite shake the feeling that it was both. I'll show you to the guest quarters, Raffaele said, standing. Try to get a few hours of sleep. We need you sharp for the meeting. We? Simone repeated, standing as well. You're part of this negotiation now. Partners, remember? Partners, Simone agreed and followed him upstairs to a surprisingly comfortable bedroom that looked more like a hotel room than warehouse accommodation. I'll wake you at noon, Raffaele said from the doorway. That gives you time to rest and prepare. Raffaele? Simone said as he turned to leave. Yes? Thank you for taking this seriously, for not making this worse than it had to be. Thank you for giving me the chance to fix it, Raffaele said. Then, with a slight smile, get some sleep, partner. Simone did sleep, better than she expected given the circumstances. When she woke, it was to find that someone had brought her clothes, her size exactly right, and toiletries. Professional hospitality, she thought. Raffaele ran a tight operation. She showered, changed into the black dress and heels that had been provided, much more appropriate for a business meeting than the club where she had been kidnapped in, and went downstairs to find Raffaele waiting. He had changed as well, now wearing a different suit, charcoal gray with a white shirt and no tie, business formal without being stuffy. He looked good, Simone thought, and then firmly pushed that thought away. Ready? He asked. Ready, Simone confirmed. Let's go make history, or prevent a war, whichever works out. Ideally both, Raffaele said, and offered her his arm. The Gramercy Hotel was neutral ground in the truest sense. It catered to celebrities and the very wealthy, people who valued privacy and discretion. The manager knew better than to ask questions when two obvious organized crime contingents showed up requesting meeting space. They were shown to a private dining room, elegant and soundproofed, where Isaiah Powell was, already waiting with two of his top lieutenants, Devin Hayes and Marcus Reynolds, both men Simone had known her entire life. Isaiah Powell was in his early 60s, a tall man with graying hair and the kind of presence that came from 40 years of commanding respect through intelligence and calculated violence. He wore an impeccable suit and an expression that gave nothing away as he assessed Raffaele Marchetti. Daddy, Simone said, crossing to kiss his cheek. Thanks for coming. You're my daughter. Of course I came. Isaiah's eyes never left Raffaele, though I'll admit I'm curious about why I shouldn't kill this man where he stands. Because I'm asking you not to, Simone said calmly, and because what he has to propose is worth hearing. He kidnapped you, baby. By mistake, and he's here to make amends and offer something valuable. Isaiah finally looked at Simone. You're vouching for him. I am. Why? Because I think he represents an opportunity, and because killing him would be wasteful when we could be building something better. Isaiah sat back, still assessing. Mr. Marchetti, my daughter seems to think you're worth keeping alive. Make your case. Raffaele had been standing silently, showing proper deference to Isaiah's position as the aggrieved party. Now he stepped forward, his posture respectful but not submissive. Mr. Powell, last night I made a catastrophic mistake. My men grabbed your daughter from Obsidian because our intelligence incorrectly identified her as being with Julian Hartley, a tech CEO who has been encroaching on my family's gambling operations. The plan was to hold her briefly, scare her, and use her to send Hartley a message about respecting established territory. Instead, you started a war with me, Isaiah said flatly. Instead, I created a diplomatic crisis that could have started a war. Raffaele corrected. But your daughter, who is considerably smarter than I gave her credit for, saw an opportunity in the crisis. She proposed that instead of fighting, our families could cooperate. Cooperate how? My family has significant connections in construction, real estate development, city zoning, and political influence at the municipal level. Your family is expanding into legitimate real estate ventures, but lacks those connections. We could provide access to permits, favorable zoning decisions, and construction services at competitive rates. In exchange, your family has expertise in community organizing, political connections at the state level, and relationships in markets where we have limited reach. We could coordinate rather than compete. You're proposing an alliance based on you kidnapping my daughter? I'm proposing an alliance as restitution for kidnapping your daughter, Raffaele said. What I did was inexcusable. But the question is whether we respond with violence that hurts both our organizations or with strategy that benefits both sides. Isaiah was quiet for a long moment. You have courage, I'll give you that. Walking into this meeting took balls, or stupidity. I haven't decided which. Probably both, Raffaele admitted, but Simone convinced me it was my best option. Did she? Isaiah looked at his daughter. You've been busy. We spent the early morning working out the details, Simone said. The proposal makes sense, Daddy. The Italians have infrastructure we need. We have market access they want. Fighting over the same territory is inefficient. Dividing it strategically is smart business. Smart business, Isaiah repeated. He stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. Everyone waited in tense silence. Finally, he turned back. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not agreeing to anything today, but I'm not starting a war either. Mr. Marchetti, you have 1 week to prove that this alliance would benefit my family. You'll provide detailed proposals for how this cooperation would work, including specific projects, revenue sharing, and governance structure. If I like what I see, we'll discuss terms. If I don't, you and I are going to have a very different conversation. That's fair, Raffaele said. And one more thing. My daughter stays out of this until I decide whether your proposal has merit. I don't want you using her as leverage or trying to negotiate through her. Daddy, Simone started. Non-negotiable, Isaiah said firmly. You've done your part, baby. Now let the adults handle the business details. Simone looked like she wanted to argue, but Raffaele spoke first. I agree to your terms, Mr. Powell. 1 week, detailed proposals, and I won't contact Simone during that time. Isaiah nodded once. Then we're done here. You'll hear from me. He left with his men, and Simone followed after giving Raffaele one last look that he couldn't quite interpret. Frustration? Regret? Something else? The next week was intensive. Raffaele assembled his best people to create proposals that would appeal to Isaiah Powell's strategic and financial interests. They identified specific real estate projects where Marchetti connections could expedite development. They outlined revenue-sharing structures that were equitable to both sides. They researched Powell family interests and tailored every aspect of the proposal to demonstrate value. Raffaele didn't contact Simone, honoring his agreement with her father, but he thought about her, more than he should. The way she had negotiated during her own kidnapping, the intelligence in those dark eyes, the way she had looked at him in the dawn light before going to sleep. This was business, he reminded himself. Strategic alliance. Nothing personal, but he couldn't quite convince himself that was entirely true. 6 days after the Gramercy meeting, Raffaele received a call from Isaiah Powell. Bring your proposals to my office in Harlem. Tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Come alone. Raffaele arrived exactly on time at the address he had been given, a brownstone in Harlem that served as Powell family headquarters. He was searched thoroughly at the door, expected and professional, then escorted to an office on the 3rd floor. Isaiah Powell sat behind a massive desk, and standing beside him was Simone. She wore a business suit in deep burgundy, her locks pulled back, looking every inch the executive she was being trained to be. When she saw Raffaele, something flickered in her expression. Relief? Pleasure? He couldn't tell. Mr. Marchetti, Isaiah said, and sit. We have things to discuss. Raffaele sat, hyper-aware of Simone's presence but keeping his attention on her father. This was Isaiah's meeting. Simone being here was significant, but he didn't know what it meant yet. I've reviewed your proposals, Isaiah said, sliding a folder across the desk. They're comprehensive, well-researched, and would indeed benefit my family's operations. You've done your homework. Thank you. But I have concerns, the biggest one being whether I can trust you. You made a catastrophic mistake. What's to stop you from making another one? Nothing, Raffaele said honestly. Mistakes happen, but I learn from them, and I've learned that your family represents an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to be managed. Pretty words, but I need more than words. What do you need? Isaiah looked at Simone, then back at Raffaele. My daughter tells me that you spent several hours working on these proposals with her, that you listened to her insights about what would appeal to Powell interests, that you treated her as an equal partner in the strategic planning. That's correct? Why? Because she's smart. She understands your organization better than I do, and she was offering to help. It would have been stupid to refuse. Most men in our world don't see women as equal partners in business. Most men in our world are stuck in the past, Raffaele said. I'm trying to build something modern. That requires using the best people available, regardless of gender. Isaiah smiled slightly. You're either very progressive or very good at saying what you think I want to hear. Both, probably, Raffaele admitted. But I mean it. Simone is one of the smartest people I've met. Not listening to her would be idiotic. Daddy, can I say something? Simone interjected. Go ahead, baby. I think we should accept his proposal. The alliance makes strategic sense. It opens up opportunities we wouldn't have otherwise. And I believe Raffaele is sincere about wanting cooperation rather than conflict. You trust him? I'm willing to give him a chance to earn trust, which is not the same thing, but it's a start. Isaiah was quiet for a moment, then nodded. All right. Here's the deal, Mr. Marchetti. I'm agreeing to a trial alliance. 6 months. We'll run a few joint projects, test the waters, see if this cooperation actually works. If it does, we'll formalize a long-term partnership. If it doesn't, we part ways cleanly with no hard feelings. That's extremely reasonable, Raffaele said, surprised. I'm a reasonable man. When it suits me. Simone will be my representative in this alliance. She'll coordinate with you on projects, handle communications between our families, and report back to me on how things are progressing. Any objections? Raffaele looked at Simone, who was watching him with an expression he still couldn't quite read. Working closely with her for 6 months, seeing her regularly, building something together. No objections, Raffaele said. I think that's an excellent arrangement. Good. Then let's drink to new partnerships. Isaiah pulled out a bottle of very expensive bourbon and 3 glasses. To cooperation, strategic thinking, and my daughter, who apparently has better judgment than I gave her credit for. They drank, and Raffaele felt something shift in the room. This was real. The alliance was happening, and he was going to be working closely with Simone Powell for the foreseeable future. That should probably concern him more than it did. After the toast, Isaiah dismissed them both. Go. Work out the operational details. I expect weekly updates, Simone. And Mr. Marchetti, don't make me regret this. I won't, sir, Raffaele promised. He and Simone left together, walking down the brownstone stairs into the autumn afternoon. That went well, Simone said once they were outside. Better than I expected. Your father's scary. He's supposed to be. It's part of the job. She smiled at him. But he likes you, or at least respects you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have agreed to the trial period. And you? Do you like me? The question was out before Raffaele could stop it, more personal than he had intended. Simone looked at him, and for a moment he saw something vulnerable in her expression. I think you're intelligent, strategic, and surprisingly honorable for someone who kidnapped me, she said carefully. I think working with you will be interesting, and I think we have the potential to build something meaningful together. That's a very diplomatic answer. I'm a very diplomatic person, when I need to be. They stood there on the Harlem sidewalk, and Raffaele felt that pull again. The attraction that he was trying very hard to ignore, because mixing business with personal feelings was always a terrible idea, especially in their world. We should celebrate, he said instead. Successful alliance, new partnership, dinner. Is this a business dinner or a personal dinner? Does it matter? Yes, Simone said, but she was smiling. Because if it's business, we should invite representatives from both families. If it's personal, it's just us. Let's call it professional with personal potential, Raffaele suggested. That's the worst definition I've ever heard. Probably, but will you come to dinner with me anyway? Simone studied him for a moment, then nodded. Yes, but somewhere neutral, and somewhere we won't be seen by too many people from our world. I don't want rumors starting before we've even figured out what this is. This? This thing between us that we're both pretending isn't happening. Raffaele laughed, surprised by her directness. You don't believe in subtlety. I believe in honesty. Life's too short for playing games. There's attraction here, chemistry, whatever you want to call it. We both feel it. The question is what we do about it. What do you want to do about it? I want to have dinner with you and see if you're as interesting in a personal context as you are in a professional one. Then I want to make informed decisions based on actual data rather than assumptions. You approach romance like a business proposition. I approach everything strategically. It's how I was raised. Is that a problem? No, Raphael said, and realized he meant it. It's actually refreshing. Most women I meet either want something from me or are afraid of me. You're neither. I definitely want something from you, Simone corrected. I just haven't decided what yet. They had dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, far from both their territories. It was intimate without being romantic, private without being secretive. The food was excellent, the conversation better. Raphael learned that Simone had studied economics at Columbia, that she spoke 3 languages, that she had initially wanted to be a professor before her father convinced her that the family needed her skills. She learned that Raphael had briefly considered going legitimate, that he played piano, that he read voraciously and had strong opinions about philosophy and history. They talked about their families, their childhoods in organized crime, the weight of legacy and expectation. They discovered they had similar frustrations with the old ways of doing business, similar visions for how to modernize their operations, similar belief that violence should be a last resort rather than a first response. And underneath all of it was the constant awareness of each other, the way Simone's eyes caught the candlelight, the way Raphael's hands moved when he talked, the electricity that sparked whenever they accidentally touched. This is dangerous, Simone said over dessert. What we're doing here. I know. Our families are just starting an alliance. Getting personally involved could complicate things. It could. And yet here we are. Here we are, Raphael agreed. Question is, what do we do about it? I don't know, Simone admitted. Part of me thinks we should keep this strictly professional. Focus on making the alliance work. Prove we can cooperate before we add personal complications. That's the smart play. But I don't want to do the smart play. I want to see where this goes. And I think you do too. Simone was quiet for a moment, then nodded. I do, which is probably a mistake. Probably, Raphael agreed. But sometimes the best things start as mistakes. Is that what this is? A mistake that might turn into something good? I think that's exactly what this is. They left the restaurant together, and Raphael called for his car while Simone waited beside him. The October night was cool, and when she shivered slightly, he took off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without thinking. Thank you, she said, pulling it closer. It smelled like him. Expensive cologne and something uniquely Raphael. You're welcome. When the car arrived, Raphael offered to drive her home, but Simone shook her head. I'll take a cab, less visible. We should probably be careful about being seen together too much until the alliance is more established. Strategically sound. But frustrating, Simone admitted. I'd like to not have to calculate political implications every time I want to see you. Soon, Raphael promised. Once our families are comfortable with the cooperation, we'll have more freedom. I'm going to hold you to that. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, brief and chaste, then stepped back before either of them could make it something more. Good night, Raffaele. Good night, Simone. He watched her cab drive away and realized he was already looking forward to seeing her again. This was dangerous territory, mixing business with personal interest. But he couldn't bring himself to care. The next 6 months were a revelation. The alliance between the Marchetti and Powell families worked better than anyone had expected. They ran joint real estate projects that were immensely profitable. They shared intelligence about mutual competitors. They coordinated operations in ways that eliminated redundancy and maximized efficiency, and at the center of it all was Raphael and Simone, working together almost daily, building trust between their families while building something else between themselves. They were careful at first, keeping their growing relationship quiet. Professional meetings that occasionally turned personal, business dinners that lingered into late nights, strategic discussions that evolved into genuine conversations about their lives, their hopes, their fears. But eventually, carefully, they let their families see what was developing. Isaiah noticed first, watching the way his daughter looked at Raffaele Marchetti during alliance meetings. The way she defended his positions, supported his initiatives, spoke about him with respect that bordered on affection. You're getting involved with him, Isaiah said one night after Simone returned from a late meeting with Raphael. It wasn't a question, so Simone didn't pretend to misunderstand. Yes. That complicates things. It does. But it also strengthens the alliance. If Raphael and I build something personal, it gives both families even more reason to maintain cooperation. That's a very strategic way to describe falling in love, Isaiah observed. I'm not in love with him, Simone protested. But even as she said it, she wasn't sure it was true. Isaiah smiled. Baby, I've watched you your whole life. I know what you look like when you're just being strategic, and I know what you look like when you actually care about someone. With Raphael, it's both. And that's either the smartest thing you've ever done or the most dangerous. Which do you think it is? I think, Isaiah said carefully, that if you're going to fall for someone in our world, an Italian mafia boss who respects you, listens to you, and is building an alliance with our family is probably the best option available. But that doesn't mean it isn't risky. Everything in our world is risky, Daddy. True, just be careful. And Simone, if he hurts you, alliance or no alliance, I will end him. I know, Simone said and kissed her father's cheek. I love you. Love you too, baby. Now go get some sleep. You have another meeting with your Italian boyfriend tomorrow. He's not my boyfriend. Sure he's not, Isaiah said, grinning. On Raphael's side, his mother Rosa was the first to notice. She came to visit from Italy, staying in Raphael's penthouse, and immediately picked up on the change in her son. Who is she? Rosa asked in Italian over breakfast one morning. Who is who? Raphael replied in the same language, though he knew exactly who she meant. The woman who has made my son smile again. You have not looked this happy since before your father died. So who is she? Raphael sighed. There was no hiding things from his mother. Her name is Simone Powell. She's the daughter of Isaiah Powell. Rosa's eyes widened. The black family we have the new alliance with? Yes. Raphael, I know how it looks, Mama, but it's real. She's smart, strong, beautiful, and she understands our world. She makes me want to be better, to build something that lasts. Rosa studied her son's face, then smiled. Then I need to meet her. This woman who has captured my son's heart. It's complicated. The alliance is still relatively new. Both families are adjusting. Love is always complicated, but that doesn't make it less valuable. Invite her to dinner. Let me meet the woman my son is falling for. The dinner was set for the following week at Raphael's penthouse. Simone was nervous in a way she hadn't been before, and Raphael found it endearing. She's going to love you, he assured Simone as they rode the elevator up to his apartment. You don't know that. I'm not Italian. I'm not who she probably imagined for you. My mother wants me to be happy. You make me happy. That's all that matters to her. But when Rosa opened the door and saw Simone for the first time, there was a moment of assessment. An older Italian woman looking at a young black woman who was dating her son. Raphael held his breath. Then Rosa smiled, genuine and warm, and pulled Simone into a hug. You are beautiful, and from what my son tells me, very smart. Come in, come in. I have made dinner. We will talk, and I will learn all about the woman who has stolen Raphael's heart. The evening was surprisingly wonderful. Rosa asked questions about Simone's family, her background, her education. She asked about the alliance between the families, about Simone's role in it, and she watched the way Raphael and Simone interacted, the easy partnership, the mutual respect, the obvious affection. You are good for him, Rosa said to Simone later, when Raphael had stepped away to take a phone call. I have watched my son carry the weight of our family since his father died. Always serious, always strategic, always alone. But with you, he smiles, he hopes, he builds rather than just protects. That is a gift. He's good for me too, Simone admitted. I was raised to take over my father's empire, to be strong and strategic and never show weakness. But Raphael sees all of me, the strategic parts and the personal parts, and he doesn't make me choose. Then hold on to him, Rosa advised. Men like my son, honorable and strong and smart, they are rare, especially in our world. I know, Simone said, and I'm not letting him go. That night, after Rosa had returned to her guest room, Raphael and Simone stood on the penthouse balcony overlooking the city. It was late November now, cold enough that they could see their breath, but neither wanted to go inside. My mother approves, Raphael said. She told me so after you left. I'm glad. I was worried she would see me as wrong for you. Different culture, different background. My mother cares about character, not background, and she could see that you have both intelligence and integrity. That's what matters. Your father would probably have hated me, Simone said. My father hated everyone who wasn't Italian. It was one of his flaws. But he's not here, and I'm building something different than he did. Something better. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, looking out at the lights of the city they both had claims on in different ways. "I'm falling in love with you," Simone said suddenly, "and that terrifies me." Raphael turned to look at her. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because love makes you vulnerable. And in our world, vulnerability gets you killed. I've spent my whole life learning to be strong, to not need anyone, to never show weakness. But with you, I want to be vulnerable. I want to trust you. And that's dangerous." "I'm falling in love with you too," Raphael said quietly. "And yes, it's dangerous. But Simone, everything in our world is dangerous. Living is dangerous. Caring about anyone is dangerous. But the alternative is being alone, building empires that mean nothing because there's no one to share them with. So what do? We be careful, we be smart, but we don't deny what this is." He turned to face her fully. "I love you, Simone Powell. I love your intelligence, your strength, your honesty. I love the way you negotiate like you're teaching a master class. I love that you turned being kidnapped into an opportunity. I love who you are and who we are together. I love you too, Raffaele Marchetti, even though you kidnapped me, even though this is complicated, even though our families probably think we're crazy." "They definitely think we're crazy," Raphael agreed, then kissed her. It was their first real kiss, and it was everything. Passionate but tender, intense but controlled. The kiss of two people who had been holding back and were finally allowing themselves to feel everything they had been suppressing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Simone smiled. "We should probably tell our families that this is serious, before they hear it from someone else." "Agreed. How do you think they'll react?" "My father will probably be relieved. He's been watching us dance around this for months. Your organization might be more resistant. Let them resist. I'm the boss. And this is what I'm choosing." They told Isaiah first, and as Simone had predicted, he wasn't surprised. "I've been waiting for you two to stop being so careful and just admit you were together," he said. "Does this mean we need to add personal considerations to the alliance agreements?" "It means," Simone said, "that the alliance is now backed by both strategic interest and personal commitment. We're not just business partners anymore. We're family." "Family," Isaiah repeated, considering. "That's a big word." "It's the right word," Raphael said. "I love your daughter, Mr. Powell. I want to build a future with her. That means our families aren't just allied. We're connected on every level." Isaiah looked between them, then nodded slowly. "All right. You have my blessing. But Raphael, if you hurt her, there won't be enough alliance in the world to save you." "Understood, sir, and I won't." Telling Raphael's organization was more complicated. Some of his people were supportive, seeing the personal relationship as strengthening the alliance. Others were skeptical, worried about mixing business with emotion, and a few were actively resistant, clinging to old prejudices about working with black families or concerns about divided loyalties. Raphael addressed the concerns directly in a family meeting. "I understand that some of you have reservations about my relationship with Simone Powell, but here's what you need to understand. This alliance has been the most profitable strategic decision we've made in a decade. Crime is down, profits are up, federal attention has decreased. The Powells are reliable partners who keep their word and share our values about minimizing violence and maximizing efficiency. And Simone personally represents the best of what their family has to offer: intelligence, strategic thinking, and integrity. But mixing business with personal relationships is dangerous," Roberto Vitale pointed out. Roberto was one of Raphael's father's old guard, a man who valued tradition above innovation. "Everything we do is dangerous," Raphael countered, "but this relationship strengthens rather than weakens our position. The Powells now have even more incentive to maintain the alliance. We have even more reason to cooperate rather than compete. And personally, I found someone who understands our world and shares my vision for the future. That's not a weakness. That's an asset." The meeting ended without full consensus, but Raphael had made his position clear. This was happening. Anyone who couldn't accept it could leave. No one left. By the spring, Raphael and Simone were openly together. They were careful about public displays, but within their communities everyone knew. The Italian Mafia boss and the Black Crime Princess, building an alliance that was both professional and personal. And it worked. Better than anyone had predicted. The two families coordinated operations so seamlessly that they became the most powerful combined force on the East Coast. Other families, both Italian and Black, started approaching them for partnerships, wanting access to the model they had created. But there was still resistance from the old guard on both sides. Men who remembered decades of rivalry and competition. Men who believed in racial divisions and separate territories. Men who saw the alliance as betrayal of tradition. One night in early April, Raffaele received intelligence that disturbed him. A faction within his own organization, led by Roberto Vitale, was planning to undermine the Powell alliance. They were going to stage an incident, make it look like the Powells had betrayed the agreement, force Raffaele to choose between his relationship with Simone and his loyalty to his family. "It's a trap," Simone said when Raffaele told her. They were in his office going over the intelligence his loyal people had gathered. "Roberto knows you won't choose against me, so he's trying to create a situation where you have no choice. He's underestimating your father's response," Raffaele said. "If this succeeds in destroying the alliance, Isaiah will retaliate. Hard. We'll be back to war, and everything we've built will burn. So we stop it before it starts." "How?" Simone smiled, and it was the smile of someone who had grown up in this world and understood its rules. "We give Roberto exactly what he wants. We make him think his plan is working. Then we prove to everyone that the people trying to destroy this alliance are the real threat, not the alliance itself. You want to let the betrayal happen? I want to control the betrayal, make it happen on our terms, in a way that's obviously false, so that when we expose Roberto's involvement, it's undeniable. We turn his trap back on him." They spent the night planning, coordinating with Isaiah and the Powell family leadership. The key was making Roberto's faction believe they were succeeding while actually controlling every aspect of the situation. 3 days later, a Powell-owned shipment was supposedly hit by Marchetti soldiers. The attack was staged, the violence was theatrical, and the whole thing was designed to look like Raffaele had ordered a strike against his allies. Roberto and his faction celebrated quietly, believing their plan had worked. They waited for Raffaele to be forced to choose, to either admit to betraying the Powells or lose credibility by denying what his men had done. What they didn't expect was the emergency meeting Raffaele called, bringing together both families at neutral ground. What they really didn't expect was the evidence Raffaele presented showing that Roberto had orchestrated the false attack using men he thought were loyal to him, but who were actually reporting to Raffaele. "You tried to destroy an alliance that has benefited everyone," Raffaele said, his voice cold as he faced Roberto across the conference table. Both families were present, witnesses to what was effectively a trial. You put your personal prejudices above family interests, and you were willing to start a war that would have killed dozens of our people. "You're betraying your father's legacy," Roberto spat, "allying with them, sleeping with one of them, making us weak." "We're not weak," Raffaele cut him off. "We're stronger than we've ever been. Profits are up 40% since the alliance began. Violence is down 60%. Federal indictments have dropped by half. By every measurable standard, we're more successful now than we were under my father's leadership. The only people who are unhappy are those who value tradition over results." Isaiah Powell spoke up from the other side of the table. "Roberto, I'm going to be honest with you. When Raffaele first came to me with this alliance proposal, I was skeptical. My people have fought Italian families for decades. Why? Should I trust Marchetti differently? But you know what convinced me? Raffaele's willingness to adapt, to be pragmatic, to value cooperation over pride. That's leadership. What you've done here, that's ego. And in our world, ego gets people killed." The verdict was unanimous. Roberto and his faction were out, stripped of their positions, given generous severance because Raffaele believed in being honorable even to enemies, but permanently removed from Marchetti operations. "Let this be a lesson," Raffaele said as the meeting concluded. "This alliance stands. Anyone who tries to undermine it will face the same consequences. We're building something new here, something better, and we're not going back." After the meeting, Simone pulled Raffaele aside. "That was well done. Firm but fair. You showed strength without being cruel." "I learned from the best," Raffaele said, kissing her forehead. "You taught me that power doesn't always require violence. Sometimes it's enough to be right, and be willing to prove it. We make a good team." "We do, in every way." He took her hand. "Simone, I want to ask you something. And before you answer, I want you to know that this isn't strategic. This is personal." "Okay," Simone said, suddenly nervous in a way she rarely was. Raffaele pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a ring. Not a traditional diamond, but a black pearl surrounded by smaller diamonds, set in platinum. Unique, beautiful, and powerful. Very Simone. "Marry me," Raffaele said. "Not because it strengthens the alliance, though it does. Not because it makes political sense, though it probably does. But because I love you. Because I want to spend my life with you. Because you're my partner in every way that matters, and I want to make that official." Simone looked at the ring, then at Raffaele, and felt tears in her eyes for the first time in years. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed while around them members of both families who had witnessed the proposal cheered. This was more than just an engagement. This was a statement. A declaration that the alliance between the Marchetti and Powell families was permanent. The wedding was planned for 3 months later, in July, and it became a major event in organized crime circles. A joining of two powerful families, yes, but also a symbol of something larger, the possibility of cooperation across old divisions, the idea that the future could be different from the past. Both families wanted to host, so they compromised with a ceremony in Brooklyn that honored both traditions. The venue was a historic estate that had once belonged to a famous Black entrepreneur, symbolically important to the Powells, but decorated with both Italian and African American cultural elements. The guest list included powerful figures from both worlds, Italian families and Black families who had rarely been in the same room except to negotiate or fight. Everyone came, dressed in their finest, and everyone came armed just in case. Old habits died hard. Isaiah walked Simone down the aisle, looking every inch the proud father despite whatever private reservations he might still have. Raffaele waited at the altar with his best man, a cousin from Italy who had flown in for the occasion, and standing as Simone's maid of honor was her childhood friend Aaliyah, who had known Simone since they were children and had never expected to see her friend marry an Italian mobster. When the music started and Simone walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Raffaele felt his breath catch. She was stunning, beautiful, powerful, and absolutely perfect. This woman who had started as a kidnapping victim and become his partner, his love, his future. They reached the altar, and Isaiah placed Simone's hand in Raffaele's. "Take care of her," he said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Make her happy. Build something beautiful together." "I will," Raffaele promised. "I give you my word." The ceremony was a blend of both traditions. A Catholic priest performed the religious portion, respecting Raffaele's Italian heritage. But there was also a recognition of Simone's family, with readings chosen to honor Black traditions and the importance of community. Both families were represented, both cultures honored, both worlds brought together. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, Raffaele kissed Simone with all the passion and promise of their future together. The venue erupted in applause, and Raffaele could see on people's faces that this was more than just support for a wedding. It was acknowledgement that something new had been born today. A new alliance, a new family, a new way forward. The reception was legendary. Food from both traditions filled tables. Italian pasta and soul food, fine wine and good bourbon, cannolis and sweet potato pie. There were toasts from both sides, with senior members of both families speaking about the union and what it represented. But the most powerful moment came when Isaiah and Raffaele's mother, Rosa, toasted together. Standing side by side, they raised their glasses and spoke about family, loyalty, and the courage it took to build bridges instead of walls. To Simone and Raffaele, Isaiah said, "May their love be as strong as their partnership. May their marriage be a foundation for peace and prosperity between our families. And may they build something that lasts long after we're all gone." To new beginnings, Rosa added, to letting go of old grudges and embracing new possibilities. And to my son and his beautiful wife, who had the courage to see past what was and imagine what could be. Everyone drank, and Simone and Raffaele shared a look that said everything words couldn't. They had done it. They had taken a catastrophic mistake and turned it into something beautiful. They had bridged families and cultures and generations of conflict. They had built something new. When they danced their first dance as husband and wife, everyone watching could see that this wasn't just a marriage of convenience or politics. This was real love. Powerful, transformative love that had changed everything. "No regrets?" Raffaele asked as they moved across the floor. "Not even one," Simone said. She smiled up at him. "Though I still can't believe this all started with you kidnapping me." "Best mistake I ever made," Raffaele said. "Terrible plan, perfect outcome," Simone agreed. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Raffaele Marchetti Powell." "Marchetti Powell?" Raffaele repeated. We're both keeping our names, Simone said firmly. This is a partnership of equals, remember? I'm Simone Marchetti Powell. You're Raffaele Marchetti Powell. Our children will carry both family names and both legacies. I love it, Raffaele said. I love you, and I love that you're my wife. Get used to it, Simone said with a grin. Because you're stuck with me now. Promise? Raffaele asked. Promise, Simone said, and sealed it with a kiss that made the wedding guests cheer again. 2 years later, Simone and Raffaele stood in the nursery of their Brooklyn brownstone, looking down at their daughter, Isabella Rose Marchetti Powell, named for Raffaele's grandmother and with both family names to represent the union she symbolized. They had moved from the penthouse to this brownstone after the wedding, wanting a real home with a yard and space for the family they planned to build. Can you believe it's been 2 years since that night? Simone asked, leaning against Raffaele's side. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, Raffaele said. Other times it feels like you've been in my life forever. Do you ever regret it? The way we met? Never, Raffaele said firmly. He turned to face her. Kidnapping you was the worst decision and the best accident of my life. It was wrong and stupid and could have started a war, but it brought you into my life, and everything good that's happened since comes from that. My father says you're the luckiest man alive, Simone said with a smile, that you kidnapped the wrong woman and somehow ended up with everything you never knew you wanted. Your father is right, Raffaele said. I am the luckiest man alive. Because I found you, Simone, or you found me, and together we built something neither of our families thought was possible. The Powell-Marchetti Alliance had transformed both organizations. They had launched legitimate businesses together, created scholarship programs for kids in both their communities, built a network that was more powerful than either family had been separately, and they had done it while minimizing violence, maximizing cooperation, and proving that old rivalries didn't have to define the future. And at the center of it all was a marriage that had started with a kidnapping and become one of the most powerful partnerships in organized crime. That's the story of Raffaele Marchetti and Simone Powell, the Italian mafia boss who kidnapped the wrong woman and the crime lord's daughter who turned a catastrophic mistake into an opportunity. A story about power and family and the dangerous beauty of finding love in the most unexpected circumstances. About two people from rival worlds who discovered that sometimes the person you think is your enemy is actually your perfect match. If this story of mistaken identity, rival families, and dangerous love moved you, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. We share new stories every week about people who discovered that sometimes the biggest mistakes lead to the greatest love, that family loyalty and personal desire don't have to conflict, and that cooperation is more powerful than competition. Drop a comment and tell us what you thought of Simone and Raffaele's story. Would you have negotiated with your kidnapper? Could you fall in love with someone from a rival family? We'd love to hear your perspective. Remember, sometimes the wrong person turns out to be exactly right, and sometimes the most dangerous situations lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.